It was one of those nights that felt wrong from the very start. I had just finished a long day of working around the house, replacing shingles on the roof, fixing up the barn, when I saw it. A letter. A simple, plain envelope resting on my doorstep, the type you never see anymore. No return address, just my name scrawled across the front in neat handwriting I didn't recognize. Rory Miller. I picked it up, my heart suddenly heavy. The storm had been picking up outside, thunder rumbling in the distance, but the air was still. The wind had a way of making this old farmhouse creak, and every sound seemed magnified in the quiet. I took the letter inside, shut the door behind me, and set it down on the table. It felt wrong, too wrong, to open it immediately, so I left it there for a while. The letter felt like something from another time, like it didn't belong in my life. It wasn't until hours later, when the storm began to rage, that I finally ripped it open. I wish I hadn't. The letter inside was simple, written in black ink. But the words, they made my blood run cold. Rory, I know what happened to your sister. I know who took her. If you want to find out the truth, come to the old Miller barn at midnight tonight. You'll find the answers you've been looking for. But hurry, time is running out. I stared at the words, my mind spinning. My sister Lydia had gone missing 20 years ago. She was just a child, a little girl. We were close enough that when she disappeared, I felt like I lost a part of myself. My parents were never the same after that. They'd searched, asked questions, hired detectives, but nothing ever turned up. No sign of her. No trace. I never thought about her much these days. I'd retreated into this farmhouse, this old house my parents had bought when I was young, trying to keep to myself. Life had a way of dragging you down, and after Lydia disappeared, everything else seemed unimportant. But now, this letter, it felt like it was dragging me back into the past. I should have thrown the letter away. I should have forgotten about it. But the thought of finally knowing what had happened to Lydia, it was too much to ignore. So I did what the letter asked. I went to the barn. The barn wasn't far from the house, just a short walk across the field. It was old, dilapidated, and the door creaked when I opened it. Inside, the air smelled musty, the wood was damp with age, and there were cobwebs in the corners. It was the same place it had always been, forgotten, dark, and empty. But tonight it felt different. It felt like something was waiting for me. I called out, but my voice was swallowed by the vast silence. No response. My boots crunched against the old floorboards as I walked deeper into the barn. And then I saw it. A large, old-fashioned chest sitting in the center of the room. I hadn't seen it before. It was new to the barn, but it was definitely old. Rusted hinges, faded leather straps, and worn wood. It looked like something from a time I couldn't place. My heart hammered in my chest as I approached it. This was it. This was what the letter had meant. I knelt down and carefully opened the chest. Inside there were bundles of old clothes, some of them torn, some of them stained. But buried beneath them there was something else, a collection of photos. Old photos. Some of them were of Lydia, her face smiling, full of life. But as I flipped through them, I began to notice something strange. In each picture there was a shadow behind her, lurking just out of sight, hidden in the corners of the frame. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. Who was this shadow? Why was it always there, and why had no one ever noticed it? I continued searching, desperation creeping into my bones. I had to know what happened to Lydia. That's when I found the last photo, a grainy, blurry image. It was a picture of my sister, lying on the floor of what looked like a basement, blood staining her clothes. She was dead. And behind her, standing in the shadows, was a man. I couldn't see his face, but I knew who he was. I dropped the photo, my hands trembling. It was him. The man who had taken Lydia. It was my own father. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind couldn't process it. My father? How could it be? He was the one who had taught me how to fix things, how to work with my hands. He had been the stable one, the one who held the family together after Lydia's disappearance. But now, looking at the photo, everything I thought I knew about him felt like a lie. I fell to my knees, my mind swirling with disbelief. What had he done? Why had he done it? I picked up the photo again, the blood draining from my face as I examined it. In the corner, there was a note scribbled on the back. It read, "I had to do it. She knew too much." What had Lydia known? What truth had she uncovered that had made my father do this? I didn't have time to think. A loud crash echoed through the barn, and I jumped to my feet, heart racing. The barn door slammed open, and I turned to see a figure standing in the doorway. It was him, my father. But it wasn't him, not anymore. His face was twisted with something dark, his eyes hollow, like he was a completely different person. "Rory," he said, his voice low and cold. "You weren't supposed to find out. I stumbled backward, my mind racing. This was the trap. This was what the letter had warned me about. He had been waiting for me to uncover the truth. You, I started, my voice shaking. You killed her. You killed Lydia. My father's face twisted into a sneer. She was going to ruin everything. You don't understand. She knew too much about what I had been doing. She had to be silenced. I couldn't breathe. I felt like the walls of the barn were closing in on me. My hands shook and I could feel the weight of everything crashing down. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then, without warning, he lunged at me. I scrambled to my feet, and in that moment of panic, I grabbed a rusty pipe that was lying on the floor. I swung it wildly, knocking him back. He stumbled, his face filled with rage. But before he could recover, I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was back inside the farmhouse, slamming the door behind me. I could hear him shouting in the distance, but I didn't care. He was gone. He wasn't following me. I thought I was safe. But the truth was, I was never safe. I called the police. I told them everything. They came, arrested my father, and brought him in. But even now, weeks later, I can't shake the feeling that something is still watching me. The house feels colder, the walls feel tighter, and I can't stop thinking about Lydia. It's done. The truth is out. But I'm left with the horrible realization that my own father killed my sister, all because she uncovered the dark secrets he had buried for years. And now, I can't escape the feeling that it's not over, that the darkness, whatever it is, still lingers in this house, waiting for me.